The flagship Dominion's Pride hung in orbit above a burning colony, its hull shimmering with arrogance as much as with polished alloys. Admiral Vorith leaned back in the command throne, one claw resting lazily on the carved armrest, his eyes fixed on the surface below where another human settlement dissolved into ash. He did not flinch at the transmission of screams picked up from the planet's open channels. He preferred to let them play. It was the sound of inevitability. "These apes plead well," one of his captains remarked dryly, adjusting his ornate collar as if the executions beneath were beneath his notice. But their words always end the same. Fire does not care for diplomacy. Vorith's mandibles curved in a grin. Peace is the first word a weakling learns. We taught them what comes after. The bridge hummed with restrained laughter. Around him, officers basked in the easy conquest, their talons tapping against consoles as if drumming to a familiar tune. The war had become routine, treaties signed, terms dictated, humans lowering their heads in supposed gratitude for mercy that never lasted longer than it took to locate the next valuable outpost. The Dominion had used the same trick on dozens of species. Humanity was not unique. A hologram shimmered into being before Vorith, carrying the image of a Dominion counselor wrapped in ceremonial robes. The voice came smooth, dripping with that particular tone reserved for victors. "The treaty is holding. Earth believes themselves spared, Admiral. Our agents confirm their colonies are scarcely armed. The time has come to harvest what they naively left unguarded." Vorith's grin widened, shadows carving across his scarred face. "They trusted us. Foolish primates. Send the fleets to their outer posts. Strip them clean." "Yes, Admiral." The hologram winked out, leaving behind the faint scent of ozone and ambition. His gaze lingered on the viewport. Below, the human city had been reduced to skeletal frames jutting from rivers of fire. Once, Vorith had found beauty in conquest, the rush of burning a rival's banner. Now it was almost monotonous. The humans folded so quickly it was dull. Their species, he thought, had been talked up far more than earned. Legends of their defiance were clearly propaganda. "Bring me something with teeth," he muttered under his breath. As if summoned, a nervous voice cracked the rhythm of complacency. "Admiral," said Officer Jurel, younger than most and less polished in tone, "their colonies, they are too quiet. No civilians fleeing, no desperate broadcasts. Even in defeat, humans are rarely this silent." The bridge stilled. A few senior officers sneered openly. Vorith arched a brow ridge. "Are you suggesting the humans learn subtlety? The same creatures who decorate their dwellings with crude flags and howl their anthems at the sky." Snickers rolled across the chamber. Jurel shrank, lowering his head. Vorith's tone hardened, but not with anger, with certainty. "Do not mistake tidiness for cunning, officer. It is merely surrender written in another script." He gestured to the tactical display, its glowing map showing clusters of human colonies scattered like crumbs. "They leave their plate open, we feast. Begin with Lunar Station Athena. It will serve as example." Orders crackled through the fleet, hundreds of warships adjusting course. The Dominion moved with practiced arrogance, each vessel like a blade honed against centuries of smaller prey. Lunar Station Athena awaited, little more than a speck of gray rock and metal floating in space. Reports suggested no more than a skeleton crew, outdated defenses, token resistance if any. Perfect for spectacle. Vorith strode to the forward deck as the fleet warped into orbit around the moon. Silence greeted them. The station hung motionless, its docking arms extended like limp fingers, its lights faint, as though already abandoned. No hails, no weapons charging. Nothing. "Pathetic," murmured one captain. "They do not even offer a struggle." "Board it," Vorith commanded. "Raise our banner on their walls, send images back to their homeworld. Let them see who rules their skies." Dropships disengaged, black teeth descending into the waiting mouth of the station. Minutes later, Dominion Marines broadcast their triumph. The humans had indeed left, their living quarters barren, consoles wiped. No struggle, no resistance. The invaders strutted through the hollow corridors, planting the Dominion's crest where once Earth's flag had hung. Too easy, Vorith muttered, though his grin remained. Send the footage. Let Earth choke on it. A voice erupted over the comm, faint at first, like a whisper from the bones of the station. Admiral Vorith. The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned toward the crackling speaker. The voice was human, calm, deliberate, unmistakably controlled. You have stepped where you should not. This was not a gift. It was a test, and you have failed it. For the first time in years, Vorith did not laugh. He gestured violently. Trace it. Static drowned the channel. A single tone echoed through every console, a low, rising hum. Suddenly the lights of the station blazed to life, not with the warmth of habitation, but the sterile brilliance of a trap. Red warning runes cascaded across the Dominion's displays. The boarding squad shouted in confusion over comms, bulkheads sealing behind them, doors locking with precision, automated systems activating. Then the explosions began. Not random chaos, but surgical detonations. Fuel depots, reactor nodes, docking arms. Each strike calculated, each detonation claiming Dominion lives and machines with merciless efficiency. On the viewport, the station bloomed into fire. Not the messy fire of defeat, but the precise burn of intent. Dominion warships reeled back, hulls torn open as debris scythed through their formations. 1/3 of Vorith's fleet vanished in minutes. The bridge swayed with impact tremors. Officers scrambled, hissing in disbelief. Vorith remained seated, claws digging into the throne, mandibles twitching with something dangerously close to admiration. They planned this, Gerald whispered, his eyes wide, terrified. Vorith's laugh came, sharp and ragged, cutting through the chaos. Yes. Finally. Something with teeth. The stations remained spun silently, a graveyard of steel and Dominion arrogance. The calm human voice did not return, but its echo lingered in every shaken officer. Vorith rose to his full height, towering above them all. Signal the council. Tell them the humans have declared war in their own way. And tell them, he paused, his grin feral. I welcome it. Around him, the crew shifted uneasily. What had begun as another conquest now stank of something different, something they had not tasted in generations, a worthy opponent. For the first time since the war began, uncertainty sat heavy in the air. The humans had not begged. They had not wept. They had set the table, laid the bait, and detonated their trap with cold precision. And Vorith, in his dark heart, could not decide whether to fear them or thank them. The war room beneath the Andes Mountains felt more like a cathedral than a bunker. Its vaulted ceiling thrummed with the resonance of shielded reactors, its walls lined with screens showing a galaxy that most civilians would never know existed. General Elias Reyes stood in the center of it all, hands clasped behind his back, posture carved from discipline. His face, lined and weathered, carried both the weariness of an old soldier and the calm of a man who had rehearsed this moment for decades. A young officer approached, tablet in hand, her voice steady, but carrying an undertone of awe. Confirmation just came in, General. Lunar Station Athena has gone dark. Dominion fleet losses estimated at 30%. The room exhaled as one. Murmurs, restrained fists pressed against lips, the hint of a suppressed cheer. Reyes did not smile. He only nodded once, as if checking off a box on a long-prepared ledger. Patient Wolf proceeds, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. They bit where we wanted. Begin stage 2. Orders rippled outward like shockwaves. Technicians adjusted code. Commanders relayed orders through encrypted wormhole relays. Ships stirred awake from silent hibernation. The illusion of human fragility was over. Reyes turned from the noise and lowered himself into a chair at the head of the chamber. His second-in-command, Colonel Anika Varga, leaned forward, her sharp features softened only by the shadows of fatigue under her eyes. They still believe us weak, she said, almost as if surprised by the Dominion's blindness. They believe what they want to believe, Reyes replied. The treaty was never about peace. It was about patience. They gave us time, and we used every second. Her mouth curled in something not quite a smile. Do you think Voreth knows? Reyes considered the name. He had studied the Admiral's face for years through intercepted feeds and intelligence reports. The arrogance, the taste for ritual humiliation, the hunger for easy victories.
He suspects.
But suspicion doesn't stop a predator already mid-lunge. He exhaled slowly, as if to bleed some weight from his chest. The real question is how long before the rest of their council listens. Across the galaxy, Voreth was already facing his humiliation. His flagship limped back to Dominion space, hull scorched, his officers avoiding his gaze. In the council chamber, his rivals hissed like carrion birds over a wounded beast. You claim the humans lured you? One sneered, voice dripping with sarcasm. Perhaps they also conjured the explosions with their primitive chants. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Voreth's eyes glowed with restrained fury. You mistake cunning for luck. That station was a weapon disguised as bait. They sacrificed it with surgical precision. The fleet losses speak for themselves. Another counselor scoffed. Losses happen. We rule half the galaxy. You embarrass yourself by elevating vermin to the stature of predators. Voreth's talons scraped against the stone table. Then ignore me, as you ignored the early warnings. But mark my words, we will not be the hunters for long. The chamber silenced at his tone, then erupted again in jeers and dismissals. To the Dominion's rulers, humans were a nuisance, not a threat. Voreth could see it in their eyes. They would do nothing until it was too late. In the human bunker, Varga scanned new reports scrolling across her console. The Dominion is mocking their own admiral, she said, disbelief coloring her tone. Even with the losses, they dismiss us. They will regret it, Reyes answered. He allowed himself a rare moment of reflection, rubbing the scar that traced from his temple to his jawline, a relic of a war Earth had fought against itself. Our ancestors fought each other for centuries with weapons that should never have existed. The Dominion thinks peace made us soft. What it did was sharpen our memory. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the murmur of machines. Varga studied him. You've always said war is inevitable. Do you regret being right? Reyes's eyes did not move from the galaxy map, where Dominion supply lines pulsed like arteries waiting to be severed. I regret that they forced us to prove it. Far across the stars, Dominion patrols began vanishing. Not in the glorious clashes their war songs celebrated, but in silence. Ships failed to report. Outposts went dark. An asteroid base critical for fuel distribution imploded without warning, leaving no wreckage for salvage. The Dominion whispered a sabotage, but the truth was quieter and more terrifying. Human fleets, invisible until they chose otherwise, were striking with deliberate precision. They did not broadcast their victories, did not gloat. They only left a pattern, a trail that whispered louder than any declaration. We are here, and we are watching. Voreth, awake in his quarters, stared at ancient footage projected across his walls. Black and white images of human trenches in mud, men charging through fire with bayonets, cities flattened by bombs, mushroom clouds rising into the sky. He had demanded every fragment of their history. The more he studied, the colder his blood ran. These are their wars against themselves, he muttered. His voice, usually brimming with arrogance, faltered. He replayed the clips, searching their faces. Fear, determination, madness, triumph. They had devoured each other for centuries, and yet here they were, still standing. No species that loved survival that much should have been left underestimated. Jurl, the nervous officer from before, stood stiffly near the door, summoned to witness. His voice cracked. Admiral, what do you see? Voreth did not look away from the mushroom cloud blooming again and again across the projection. I see why they are silent. Jurl swallowed, throat dry. Shall I prepare reports for the council? Voreth shook his head. They would laugh, as always. No, let them laugh. It will make their screams sharper when the silence breaks. Back on Earth, Reyes convened his senior staff. The bunker's lights dimmed to a scarlet hue as encrypted feeds linked to fleets hidden near the Oort cloud. Captains appeared as holographic silhouettes, every one of them composed, unsmiling. "The Dominion believes we are fractured," Reyes told them. "They mistake our silence for weakness. They have not learned that silence can be a weapon." He looked around the table, meeting each officer's eyes in turn. "We will not roar. We will not boast. Every strike we deliver will be exact, unannounced, merciless. By the time they understand, it will be too late to fear us properly." A captain's voice broke the stillness, respectful but curious. "General, what do you want the galaxy to think when the Dominion falls?" Reyes's gaze hardened. "That humanity begged for peace and was denied. That we gave warning and were ignored. That when the knife came for our throat, we did not scream. We sharpened our own." The words settled like iron across the room. There was no applause, no outcry. Just quiet assent. Soldiers who knew the path ahead carried no glory, only necessity. Far beyond their walls, Dominion fleets prepared for their next campaign, oblivious to the shadows already circling. Vorith alone, amid his rivals, felt the tremor beneath his feet. He did not yet know if it was fear or anticipation. The silence continued, but it was not the silence of surrender. It was the silence before the storm. Vorith's private chamber was unlit save for the flicker of human war footage on the projection wall. Grainy reels of soldiers clawing through mud, black and white faces twisted in terror and resolve, cities obliterated in firestorms. Again and again the mushroom clouds rose, their shadows swallowing the screen. He had ordered these archives pulled from every corner of Dominion intelligence, pieced together from captured broadcasts and intercepted data. He could not look away. Juro lingered at the doorway, shifting his weight, uncomfortable with the silence. The Admiral had not spoken for hours, and the sight of their supreme commander studying primitive wars unsettled him more than any human trap had. "Admiral," he ventured softly, "you've watched the same sequence 12 times. Vorith did not turn. His claws rested on the stone desk, flexing in rhythm with the explosions. Look at them, Juro. They kill each other with such abandon. No treaties, no restraint, just endless hunger for survival through blood. Do you see the madness in their eyes?" The young officer hesitated, then nodded. "It is disturbing. It is worse than disturbing," Vorith said, voice low, mandibles tightening. "It is a memory. The humans carry this in their marrow. Every piece they make is an intermission, nothing more. And we thought them tamed." Juro lowered his gaze. He had never heard the Admiral speak with such gravity, almost reverence. The words carried not only fear, but something closer to awe. The next morning, Vorith entered the High Council chamber armed not with threats, but with truth. He strode to the center, eyes burning, and activated the projection feed. The room filled with scenes of Earth's past wars. The counselors were recoiling at the savagery. "This," Vorith thundered, "is not the desperation of the weak. This is the history of predators who fight even themselves to extinction's edge. They did not surrender. They prepared. You mocked my warnings. Now you must see." A counselor rose, elegant robes flowing, his sneer unbroken. "What you show us is chaos. These apes are relics gnawing on their own bones. Do you fear vermin so much that you call their tantrums genius?" Vorith slammed a claw against the table, the crack echoing. "They do not tantrum. They calculate. They sacrificed entire colonies to draw us in. They allowed our arrogance to blind us. And we laughed." His voice rose, carrying across the chamber with a weight that silenced even his critics. "We have awakened something that should have been left sleeping." For a moment, unease rippled through the council. Yet pride was a stronger drug than fear. Another voice cut through the stillness, smooth and derisive. "The Dominion is eternal. If humans fight, they will die as all others before them. Your failures do not redefine reality." The debate dissolved into jeers, dismissals, arrogant declarations. Vorith stood in the center, alone, fury and dread colliding in his chest. He realized then what Juro had whispered days earlier. The humans were too quiet. The council had not noticed, but he had. the silence of a species preparing its teeth. Far away, under the cold stone of the Andes bunker, General Reyes listened to the Dominion's political broadcasts through a secure channel. He heard the dismissals, the laughter, the contempt for humanity's strength. He did not smile. He only turned to Colonel Varga, his voice flat. They think we are shadows.
Good.
Let them. Varga studied the tactical display, red lines tracing Dominion supply chains, glowing, marking their vital shipyards. When do we move on the Cartos ring? When their arrogance peaks, Reyes answered. A blow delivered too soon is wasted. We want them to laugh until their laughter turns to choking. She nodded, but her eyes lingered on him. You sound less like a general and more like a surgeon. War is not theater, Reyes said. It is incision. The first incision came days later. The Cartos ring, a massive orbital shipyard, disappeared in silence. No human broadcast claimed credit, no triumphant declaration. Dominion fleets simply awoke to find their lifelines severed, thousands of workers vanished, reactors gutted. Panic spread not among soldiers, but among civilians who had never tasted defeat. Vorath received the report in silence. His claws tapped against the console, steady, deliberate. Surgical, he whispered, echoing Reyes unknowingly. He felt the tightening coil of inevitability. His enemies within the council might still jeer, but he knew. The Dominion had been cut, and more cuts would follow. He called Jurl to his side. Prepare the fleet for contingencies. I want constant patrols, overlapping scans, no blind zones. If the council mocks, let them. We will not be caught gasping again. Jurl nodded quickly, but his eyes betrayed his fear. Do you believe, Admiral, that we can stop them? Vorath turned to him slowly, the weight of centuries in his stare. Stopping them is no longer the question. Surviving them is. Meanwhile, Reyes assembled his captains in the war room. The holographic table glowed with star maps, each Dominion world a potential target. His voice carried none of the fire of ancient generals, but the calm, steady tone of a man reciting inevitability. They know our name, but not our hand. Each strike will be clean, swift, without flourish. We are not here for glory. We are here to end the Predator's reign. One of the younger captains raised a question, hesitant. General, if we succeed, we do not simply win a war. We inherit the galaxy they once ruled. What then? The question lingered like smoke. Reyes's expression did not shift. Then we remember why we fought. Not for conquest. Not for banners. For survival. If we forget that, we become them. The captains absorbed the words in silence. None argued, none cheered. Humanity had been underestimated because it never gloried in war with outsiders. It fought only when cornered. Now, cornered at last, it would not stop until the corner was erased. Reports soon spread through the Dominion of vanishing patrols, entire fleets swallowed by shadows. Commanders tried to rally, but their words rang hollow when comm stations went dark mid-speech. Whispers began among soldiers and civilians alike. The humans are everywhere. The humans see everything. The silence became heavier than any roar of victory. Vorath stood at his viewport, watching the stars. For the first time in his life, he felt small beneath them. The Dominion's fleets still dwarfed humanity's on paper, but numbers no longer comforted him. The humans were not waging a war of size. They were waging a war of precision, and precision always outlasted arrogance. Behind him, Jurl spoke softly. Admiral, what if the Council is wrong? What if you are the only one who sees? Vorath did not turn. His mandibles twitched with grim certainty. Then the Dominion is already lost. On Earth, Reyes received word that the Cartos strike had been successful, without a trace. He closed his eyes briefly, not in triumph, but in solemn acknowledgement. They will begin to fear us now, he murmured. Varga, standing beside him, tilted her head. Fear is useful. Reyes opened his eyes, cold steel in his gaze. Fear is not the goal. Fear is the beginning. The war was no longer distant raids and hollow treaties. The war was here, reshaping both predator and prey. One side laughed still, blind to the shadow on its neck. The other sharpened its silence into a blade. And in that narrowing space between arrogance and revelation, the storm gathered. The Dominion's capital system shimmered with the arrogance of 1,000 years of conquest. Layered rings of defense platforms surrounded its jewel world, each bristling with weapons, each command tower radiating confidence that nothing could breach them. Countless fleets patrolled the black, banners lit like constellations, a show of strength meant to intimidate lesser species. General Reyes studied the display of it from Earth's command bunker, his face a study in calm calculation. He had watched empires before, on screens, in history books, through the ruins of his own people's wars. They all gleamed brightest before the fire consumed them. He turned to Varga, her expression taut with anticipation. "They believe in walls," he said, voice quiet enough to force those nearby to lean closer. "They think fortresses protect them. But fortresses are cages when the fire comes from inside." Signals flickered along the table surface. Hidden human fleets moved through wormholes. AI-driven squadrons danced across the dark like phantoms. Infiltration programs already gnawed at Dominion networks. Every part of the storm was ready. Varga's voice was hushed but steady. "Then we begin?" Reyes gave a single nod. "Begin." In the Dominion's prideful sky, space tore open. Wormholes unfurled like scars in reality, spilling forth ships that should not have existed, designs no Dominion scan had ever catalogued. Drones by the thousands moved without formation, their chaos deliberate, overwhelming sensors. Stealth frigates blinked into being inside the defense rings, surgical in their strikes. The first platforms exploded before their operators could register alarms. Communications warped with digital ghosts as human code slipped through their systems, rewriting command protocols in seconds. Admiral Vorith stood on his bridge as his home defenses erupted into chaos. Around him, officers shouted, their arrogance burned away in the furnace of panic. Vorith did not shout. His claws rested on the railing, eyes fixed on the impossible unfolding across the void. "They were never weak," he murmured. "They were waiting." His words went unheard beneath the cacophony. Human transmissions broke into Dominion channels, not boastful, not triumphant, just calm, clinical announcements. "Cease hostilities. This is your only warning." The tone chilled every spine that heard it. The enemy did not rage, did not gloat. They simply spoke as though the outcome was already decided. Vorith barked orders, rallying what remained of his fleet. Dominion ships swarmed forward, but their formations shattered under precision. Human vessels struck from angles they had no names for, warping across space as if distance itself were an illusion. For every Dominion salvo, 3 of their ships fell silent, dead, without glory. On Earth, Reyes watched the unfolding massacre not with joy, but with an unyielding calm. His eyes tracked each red icon fading from the Dominion's map. "We told them not to push," he said softly, almost to himself. "We told them again and again, and they laughed." Varga's hands tightened behind her back. "We could end them now, glass the capital, burn their council chambers to ash." Reyes turned his gaze on her, steel sharp enough to cut. "And become them? No. Let the galaxy see restraint where the Dominion only showed hunger. Fear is useful, but control is stronger." Vorith's flagship shook with another impact, alarms wailing, hull plating splintering. He knew the truth now, and he hated it. The Dominion had lost long before this battle began. Humanity had studied them, dissected their arrogance, and turned silence into a weapon sharper than any blade. The calm crackled, and for the first time, Reyes's face appeared before him. Hard, scarred, eyes like storm clouds. The voice matched the calm messages before. "Admiral Vorith, stand down." Vorith stared at the image, chest heaving. Around him, officers looked to him for defiance, for one last roar of pride. But his mandibles did not pardon laughter. Instead, they tightened in something closer to resignation. "You orchestrated this from the beginning," he said, voice low, steady. The treaties, the colonies, the silence. You knew we would strike. Reyes did not blink. We knew you would betray. You have never done anything else. Vorth's gaze dropped, just briefly. He had mocked humans for peace, mocked them for patience. Now, staring at the ruin of his fleet, he understood both had been their sharpest blades. The battle ended not with a Dominion charge, not with a final blaze of honor, but with the quiet surrender of a fleet too broken to fight. Human ships encircled the capital world, not raining fire but severing power grids, disabling weapons, shutting the Empire down with surgical precision. The galaxy watched as the once proud Dominion bent under a silence heavier than any bombardment. In the council chamber, chaos reigned. Leaders screamed, fled, tore at each other's pride. But Vorth stood still, summoned into a chamber stripped of its former glory. And there he met Reyes in person, the human general flanked by silent guards. The air between them carried centuries of blood and arrogance. Vorth straightened, bruised but unbowed, expecting execution, humiliation, some ritual of dominance. Instead, Reyes simply said, "You live. Not as conqueror, not as prisoner, as witness." Vorth's mandibles twitched. "Witness to what?" "To what you created," Reyes answered. "You taught us peace was weakness. You forced us to remember what we are. Now you will carry that truth to your people. You will govern them, not for your empire, but for the order we will shape together. The alternative is extinction." The weight of the word struck harder than any weapon. Vorth saw no cruelty in Reyes's gaze, only inevitability. The human had no need to gloat. The silence was victory enough. After a long moment, Vorth inclined his head, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement. When he departed the chamber, he carried no chains, only the knowledge that the galaxy's order had shifted, and he was now bound to serve the very species his empire had sought to break. Back on Earth, Reyes returned to the bunker. Alone in his quarters, he allowed himself a single moment of reflection. The maps showed no more red lines, no more Dominion power. Humanity stood unchallenged. Yet there was no triumph in his eyes, only the cold burden of what had been unleashed. He whispered to the empty room, words not meant for history but for the ghosts of every soldier who had fought before. "We begged for peace. They gave us war. Now the galaxy will live in the shadow of what they woke." The storm had passed, but its silence promised something greater. Humanity was united, awakened, and no longer pretending to be small. For the first time in millennia, the stars would bend not to conquest, but to the cold will of a species that had survived its own fire and carried it outward. And somewhere deep within him, Reyes knew the truth no declaration could erase. Peace had been lost forever. What remained was something harder, sharper, and perhaps even stronger. The galaxy would never laugh at humanity again.